Welcome to section 2.4. In this video, we are going to learn how to subtract fractions. Now, subtracting fractions they have the same exact process as adding fractions do. So we're not changing any of the processes. We just have learned to add two fractions. The only thing we have to pay attention to is now that we're subtracting them rather than just adding them. That's simply the only difference between the two. So with that being said, in this section though, we're going to have fractions that have common denominators and don't have common denominators. So you're going to have to start paying attention whether or not we have common denominators or if we don't. And if we don't, we're going to have to find those common denominators and subtract the two fractions. So with that being said, let's look at example 1. Now, I encourage you to pause the video and see if you can try this one on your own. And now let's work through it. So, in this case, our fractions, our denominators are common because we have a 2 and a 2. So all we have to simply do is take this numerator, do 1 minus 1, put that over 2. 1 minus 1 is 0, and 0 over 2. And anything divided by 0 is 0, so this is going to be 0. Looking at example 2, we also have a common denominator of 7, so we can just rewrite this as 2 minus 8 over 7. And 2 minus 8 is negative 6, so we're just going to have negative 6 over 7, and that is our final answer. Looking at example 3, I encourage you to try this one on your own, and assuming that you have tried this on your own, in this case, we have two fractions that don't have a common denominator. So to get our common denominator, I'm going to multiply this denominator and numerator by 2 to get this denominator as a 4, so that when we both have new denominators of 4. So 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. So 3 minus 2 is 1, and we're going to put that over 4. That's our answer. Looking at example 4, we have 8 over 14 minus 5/6. So here, we are going to have to find a common denominator. And with this, I would multiply 14 by 3 in this case, and multiply 6 by 7. And now you may be asking, why am I doing that? Why don't I just multiply 6 by 14? And why don't I just multiply 14 by 7? Well, the answer to that is we could do that, but if we do that, we are basically making larger numbers than we need. So in some cases, right, in some cases, if we look at example 5, we will have to multiply 7 times 3 and do 3 times 7. But in this case, if you were to multiply 3 by 14, which that'll get you 42, and multiply 6 by 7, you'd realize that will also get you 42. So in this case, we don't need to actually multiply 14 by 6 because you just get an unnecessary larger number or larger fraction, which will make you have to do more reducing in the end of it. So that's just one thing I wanted to point out. So you can multiply these two numbers together if you would like, but that will make you do more reducing and more work in the end than you need to. So anyways, that was a long ramble. So 3 times 8 is 24. And then we're going to put that over 42. And then 5 times 7 is 35. And then 6 times 7 is 42. So 24 minus 35 is negative 11. And that's just over 42. That's our answer. So looking at example 5, to find the common denominator, I'm going to multiply by 3. multiply this by 3, and then I'm going to multiply this by 7, multiply this by 7. So 3 times 3 is 9. And we're going to make this a negative because there's a negative sign here. And 3 times 7 is 21. And then we're going to subtract 4 times 7. And 4 times 7 is 28 over 21. Negative 9 minus 28 will get you at negative 37. And we'll put that over 21. And that is our answer. Looking at example 6, I'm going to convert this mixed number into a fraction and then subtract the two fractions or find a common denominator if we need. And I encourage you to actually pause the video and try example 6 on your own. Now let's work through it. So I'm going to multiply 2 and 6 and add that to 4. So 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 4 is 16. So you get 16 over 6. And then we're going to subtract 7 6. In this case, we have common denominators. We have common denominator of 6. So 16 minus 7 is 9. That is over 6. And in this case, we can divide both the numerator, not by 2, and denominator by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And 2 halves is our final answer. Looking at example 7, we have 10 over 13 minus 15. So in this case, we can put this over 1, and then we can multiply both the numerator and denominator by 13. So we have 10 over 13, and then 15 times 13 is 195. We're going to put that over 13, and then we're going to get negative 185 over 13. Looking at example 8, we have 8 over 20 minus negative 2/6. So the first thing to recognize here is that we have two negatives. We're subtracting a negative, so we can say chop chop, and this becomes addition. And then when we also have to realize we don't have a common denominator. So to find that common denominator, I am going to multiply 20 by 3. And I'm also going to multiply 6 by 10 to get a common denominator of 60. So 8 times 3 is 24. 20 times 3 is 60. Plus 2 times 10 is 20. And 6 times 10 is 60. And 24 plus 20 is going to be 44. And then we're going to put that over 60. In this case, we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 4. And then you will get 11 over 15. That is your answer. Looking at example 9, I encourage you to pause the video and try it on your own. And let's work through it together. So we have a negative, and then we're going to subtract another negative. So therefore, this actually becomes addition here. And this might be, if this is confusing to you, remember negative 1 over 3 is the same thing as negative 1 over 3. So because this is a negative fraction and we're subtracting a negative fraction, this becomes addition, and this fraction becomes a positive. So really, we're dealing with negative 5/9 plus 1/3. And then from here, we can multiply this 1/3 by 3 to find this common denominator. And we're going to get negative 5 over 9, and then we're going to add 3. negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2, and we're going to put that over 9. Okay, so for the following examples, if you feel like you've got a hold on this, I encourage you to pause the video and work through all of these examples. In the next examples, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about like all the details that I'm doing. I will be talking through the steps, but I feel like because we have done so many examples of adding and subtracting fractions, at this point, I am just going to go through it, walk you through the steps as I'm doing it, but I'm not going to be talking so much because I don't want us to be watching a video lecture forever. So I encourage you to pause the video and try all of these, and let's work through it. So I can put this 2 over 1 to make this a fraction. And then to get a common denominator, I can multiply both these by 8. So that's one of the things. And then also from here, you can also recognize that we have a negative, but we're subtracting a positive. So we don't need to, this isn't going to change to addition, which is good. So we have negative 5/8. And then 2 times 8 is 16. So we're going to do 16. And then that's going to be over 8. So that becomes negative 21 over 8. And then here, we're going to put this over 1. And to get this as a common denominator, multiply by 10. 4 times 10 is 40 over 10. Minus 6 over 10. This becomes 34 over 10. And because we have 2 even numbers, we can divide by 2. And then I'll get you 17 fifths. And that's your final answer. Looking at example 12, let's convert this mixed number into a fraction. 6 times 4 is 24. 24 plus 1 is 25. So we're going to change the 17 into a number, or to a fraction, by putting it over 1. So we're going to do 17 over 1 minus 25 over 4. And to get a common denominator, I'm going to multiply this fraction by 4. So 17 times 4 is 68. So you get 68 over 4 minus 25. Hi. Minus 25 over 4. 68 minus 25 is 43. We're going to put that over 4. And then for these last ones, negative 72 over 3 minus 7 over 3, we have common denominators. So we can just simply do negative 72 minus 7. Over 3, which is negative 79 over 3. And then here, we're going to change these mixed numbers into fractions. And when you do that, you're going to get 16 over 3 minus 44 over 10. And to find a common denominator, I'm going to simply multiply this fraction by 10 and multiply this fraction by 3 to get a common denominator of 30. 16 times 10 is 160. And then we get 30. 44 times 3 is 132 over 30. And then we get 28. Oh, that's messy. 28 over 30. And we can divide both these numbers by 2 to reduce the fraction. And that'll get you 14/15. And looking at this last example, we can put this 13 over 1. We can make this fraction from a mixed number to a regular fraction. So we get 13 over 1. And then this will get you, this also will get you 190 over 20. And then from here, what we can do is we can find the common denominator, multiply by 20, 20, and then you're going to get 260 minus 190, and put that over 20, and then that's going to get you 70. All right. Oh my goodness, Mason. And that is going to get you 70 over 20. And then we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 10 to reduce the fraction into 7/2.